The moment I realized I was falling for you, I started planning my escape. Not because you weren't worth loving, but because loving you felt like handing you the power to destroy me completely. The more I cared, the more dangerous it felt to let you know how much you mattered. I'm going to show you the 5 ways to stay connected when she creates distance because she cares too much, and why understanding her protective retreat is the key to earning her trust. Strategy number 1. Recognize that distance is often proportional to how much she actually cares about you. The second most effective strategy when she creates distance, retreat usually happens because the relationship has become important to her, not because it hasn't. When I first realized I was developing real feelings for you, the kind that kept me awake thinking about your smile, the kind that made me check my phone every few minutes hoping for your text, my immediate response was to start building walls. Not because I wanted to push you away, but because caring that much felt terrifying. The distance I created wasn't random or casual. It was carefully calculated protection against the vulnerability that comes with admitting someone has become essential to your happiness. The men who understood this could see through my retreat to the fear underneath and respond accordingly. What doesn't help when she starts creating distance? Assuming she's losing interest or trying to match her energy by pulling back yourself. This often confirms her worst fears, that caring leads to abandonment, and pushes her further into protective mode. What does help? Recognizing that her distance might be evidence of her feelings, rather than absence of them. Responding with consistent warmth while giving her space to process shows that you understand the difference between someone who's disinterested and someone who's scared. My therapist helped me understand that I created distance as a way of regaining control over my emotional state when someone became too important to my sense of well-being. The fear wasn't that you'd leave. It was that I'd already given you the power to hurt me by caring so much. Understanding this paradox, that distance can indicate depth rather than detachment, allows you to respond from a place of security rather than insecurity, which gives her the safety she needs to eventually move through her fear rather than stay stuck in it. My chest would stay tight for days during these periods because I was fighting my own desire to be close while simultaneously testing whether you'd understand that my retreat was protection, not rejection. But recognition alone isn't enough when someone you care about starts building walls. Strategy number 2. Maintain consistent emotional temperature regardless of her fluctuating availability. The second most effective strategy when she creates distance is becoming the stable emotional constant that she can depend on while she works through her internal conflict about caring. A few weeks into my pattern of creating distance whenever I felt too vulnerable, the most reassuring response was when you didn't mirror my energy changes. When I would become less communicative, you didn't become less communicative. When I would take longer to respond, you didn't start timing your responses to match mine. You stayed exactly who you were, regardless of my emotional availability. This consistency was crucial because one of my deepest fears was that getting close to someone meant they would eventually use my feelings against me or withdraw their care when I became inconvenient. When you could maintain your warmth and interest, even when I was being difficult to connect with, it slowly taught me that some people's care isn't conditional on perfect reciprocation. The approach that worked best? Continuing to show the same level of interest and affection you'd always shown, while not demanding that she match your energy immediately. This might look like still sending good morning texts, even when she's responding hours later. Still asking about her day, even when her answers are shorter than usual. Still being enthusiastic about seeing her, even when she's been emotionally unavailable. What this doesn't mean? Ignoring your own needs or accepting poor treatment indefinitely. It means maintaining your emotional center while she finds hers, not abandoning your emotional needs to accommodate her fear. What this does mean? Showing that your care isn't dependent on constant reinforcement, which is often exactly what someone who creates protective distance needs to learn about love. That it can exist without constant maintenance or perfect performance. My nervous system would gradually calm when I experienced this type of consistency because it contradicted everything I'd learned about how people behave when relationships become work instead of entertainment. This emotional stability on your part often becomes the safe harbor someone needs to work through their fears about vulnerability, rather than avoiding vulnerability altogether. Understanding that consistency doesn't mean passivity allows you to provide security while still maintaining your own emotional integrity. Strategy number 3. Address her fears directly without trying to talk her out of having them. The third most helpful strategy when she creates distance is acknowledging her underlying concerns without dismissing them or trying to logic them away. When I would start creating distance, the most comforting conversations happened when someone could say something like, "I notice you seem to be pulling back a bit. I want you to know that's okay. I understand that caring about someone can feel scary sometimes. I'm not going anywhere while you figure out what you need." This type of response worked because it acknowledged what was actually happening, without making me defend it or explain it in detail. It also addressed the core fear driving my distance, that caring would lead to abandonment, by directly stating the opposite intention. What never helped? Trying to convince me that my fears were irrational or unfounded. When someone would say things like, "You don't need to worry about me leaving," or "I'm not like the other guys who hurt you," it put me in the position of having to trust promises rather than observe patterns, which felt even more vulnerable. What consistently helped? Validating the logic of my protection, while demonstrating through actions that the protection might not be necessary in this case. It makes sense that you'd want to protect yourself. Caring about someone is risky. I'm going to keep showing you that I'm safe to care about. No pressure on you to believe it before you're ready. The goal isn't to eliminate her fears immediately, but to create an environment where working through them feels possible rather than necessary for maintaining your connection. If you're watching this because someone's protective distance has left you feeling confused about where you stand, subscribe now. What I reveal next shows how to bridge the gap between her fear and your consistency. What I needed most during these conversations was someone who could hold space for my fear without trying to fix it immediately, while also demonstrating through behavior that the fear might be outdated information rather than current reality. My shoulders would physically relax when someone could acknowledge my self-protective instincts without judgment, while also making it clear that they weren't going to let those instincts push them away prematurely. This balance requires emotional maturity, being understanding without being permissive, patient without being passive. But even perfect understanding has limits when someone is stuck in protective patterns. Strategy number 4. Create opportunities for low-pressure connection that don't require emotional vulnerability. The fourth most effective strategy when she's creating distance is providing ways to maintain connection that don't trigger her need for emotional self-protection. During my distance creation phases, the most helpful invitations were for activities that allowed us to be together without requiring deep conversation or emotional processing. Suggesting we watch a movie, go for a walk, help each other with practical tasks? These gave me ways to spend time with you without feeling like I had to perform emotional availability I wasn't ready to access. This approach worked because it honored my need for space while also maintaining the relationship foundation. Instead of all or nothing options, deep emotional connection or complete separation, you provided middle ground, where I could experience your presence without the pressure of vulnerability. The activities that worked best during these phases were ones that involved doing something together rather than talking about our relationship or feelings. Working on a project, cooking together, going somewhere interesting, anything that gave us shared experience without requiring me to explain my internal state or make promises about my emotional future. What doesn't work during protective distance? Pushing for heart-to-heart conversations, relationship status discussions, or emotional processing sessions. These can feel overwhelming when someone is already struggling with vulnerability and can push them further into withdrawal. What does work? Invitations that say, "I enjoy your company," without saying, "I need your emotional availability." This shows that you value her as a person, not just as a source of romantic validation, which often helps someone feel safer about gradually returning to emotional openness. The key is consistency in these invitations, without pressure around acceptance. Continuing to invite connection while being genuinely okay when she needs to decline removes the performance pressure that often drives distance creation in the first place. My heart rate would stay elevated for hours after declining these invitations because I wanted to accept them, but couldn't convince my nervous system that spending time together wouldn't lead to demands for emotional intimacy. I wasn't prepared to provide. The men who could offer connection without emotional strings attached were often the ones I felt safest eventually opening up to, because they'd proven they could enjoy my company without requiring access to my fears. This approach requires genuine enjoyment of her presence beyond romantic potential, but it often creates the foundation for emotional safety that allows romance to develop naturally. Strategy number 5. Know when to set your own boundaries while keeping the door open for her growth. The fifth and most crucial strategy when she creates protective distance is maintaining your own emotional well-being while giving her reasonable time and space to work through her fears. There came a point in my distance creation patterns where I realized that some people would tolerate indefinite emotional unavailability, which actually increased my anxiety because I knew I was taking advantage of their patience. The most helpful approach was when someone could set loving boundaries around the situation. The most effective boundary setting I experienced sounded like, "I understand you need space to figure out your feelings, and I respect that. I also need to take care of my own emotional needs. I'm happy to give you time to process. Let's check in with each other in 2 weeks and see how you're feeling about moving forward together." This approach gave me a timeline that felt fair, while making it clear that emotional availability mattered and couldn't be taken for granted forever. It showed respect for my process while also demonstrating self-respect, which actually made me more motivated to work through my fears rather than indefinitely avoiding them. What doesn't work? Ultimatums that feel punitive. "Figure this out, or I'm gone." Or boundaryless patience that enables endless withdrawal. "Take all the time you need. I'll wait forever." Both can increase anxiety rather than providing the structure needed for growth. What does work? Clear, compassionate limits that acknowledge both people's needs while creating gentle accountability. "I care about you and want to support you through this. I also need to know we're working toward the same goal of having a real relationship, rather than staying in this uncertain space indefinitely." The most motivating boundaries included reassurance about feelings while being honest about limits. "My feelings for you aren't going anywhere, and I also can't put my emotional life on hold indefinitely while you decide if you want to be in this with me." This kind of boundary often pushed me to choose between my fear and my desire for connection, rather than allowing me to avoid the choice entirely. It forced me to either work through my protective patterns or accept that my fear was stronger than my feelings for you. My stomach would drop when I received this kind of boundary because it meant I had to make a real decision about whether I wanted to grow toward love or stay safe in distance. But it was often exactly the motivation I needed to choose growth. Setting boundaries during someone's protective phase isn't about rushing them. It's about creating a framework that supports both people's emotional needs while encouraging movement toward connection. When someone creates distance because they care, your response determines whether their protection becomes permanent or temporary. Understanding that distance can be evidence of feelings rather than absence of them allows you to respond with security rather than insecurity, which gives her the emotional safety she needs to work through whatever makes caring feel dangerous. The goal isn't to eliminate her need for self-protection, but to demonstrate that protection might not be necessary with you, while respecting her process of discovering that for herself. Here's what I wish someone had understood during my protective distance phases. I'm not creating distance because I don't want you. I'm creating distance because I want you so much it terrifies me. And I need to learn that wanting someone doesn't have to mean losing myself. The most helpful response to protective distance is consistent emotional presence without pressure, understanding without enabling, and patience with healthy boundaries. Do I regret all the times I created distance when I should have moved closer? Yes, because it cost me opportunities for deeper connection with people who deserved better than my fear-based inconsistency. Do I understand why I needed protection sometimes? Finally, and understanding it has helped me recognize the difference between healthy caution and fear-based avoidance. Would I want someone to wait indefinitely while I work through my protective patterns? No, because part of what motivated my growth was knowing that good people wouldn't tolerate endless emotional unavailability, even when it came from caring too much rather than not caring enough. If someone you care about is currently creating distance because they care, maybe they're not protecting themselves from you. Maybe they're protecting themselves from the intensity of their own feelings. And they need time to learn that feeling deeply doesn't have to mean getting hurt deeply. Maybe the most loving thing you can do is show them that consistency exists, that care doesn't have to be earned through perfect performance, and that some people can handle being wanted without using that want as power. And maybe the kindest response is demonstrating that love can be patient without being passive, understanding without being enabling, and secure enough to wait for someone to feel safe being themselves with you. But how do you balance patience with self-respect? How do you provide security without losing yourself in someone else's process? These questions require ongoing navigation rather than one-time answers. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is create space that feels safe for both people while they learn to trust connection. If you want to understand more about what to do when someone pulls away after getting closer, watch my video, What to Do When She Pulls Away After Getting Closer. That video will show you specific strategies for handling retreat behavior while maintaining your own emotional integrity and the connection you've built together.